There's a moment in almost every open-world game where you stop following the main quest. Something catches your eye. A distant light. A path you didn't notice before. A character standing off to the side. Someone who doesn't seem important until they hand you a small, strange task. You tell yourself, just quickly, just a detour. 10 minutes, maybe. 3 hours later, you're on the other side of the map, carrying something you never expected to find, thinking about a story you never planned to discover. And somehow, even though you've completely ignored what you were supposed to be doing, this feels like the most alive you've been in the entire game. That feeling has a name. It's the side quest. And it might be the most underrated thing in any game, or any life. Every game is built around a main quest, a central objective, the path the designers laid out and expect you to follow. And there's nothing wrong with that path. It's usually well crafted. It has structure, momentum, a clear sense of progress. You know where you're going. You know what success looks like. But most players, at some point, leave it. Not because they're lost, not because they failed, but because something else caught their attention. Something unplanned, unexpected, slightly off the beaten track. And the games that are truly remembered, the ones people carry with them for decades, are almost never remembered for their main quests alone. They're remembered for the unexpected discoveries, the characters you stumbled onto by accident, the places you found because you took a wrong turn and kept walking. Life is structured the same way. We're handed a kind of main quest early on. Go to school, build a career, follow the path that the people around you recognize as sensible and successful. And for a long time, we follow it. Then, at some point, something happens that isn't on the map. A conversation that leads somewhere unexpected. An interest picked up almost by accident. A detour forced on you by circumstances you didn't choose and didn't want. And years later, looking back, you realize that unplanned thing, that side quest, that was the part that changed everything. There's a quiet pressure in most lives, not always spoken, but deeply felt, to stay on the main path. Do the sensible thing. Make the expected choice. Don't stray too far from what you're supposed to be doing. Games reflect this too. Some players never leave the main quest line. They follow the markers, complete the objectives, see the credits roll. That's a complete experience. There's real value in focus and discipline. But there's something dedicated. Side questers understand that main quest-only players sometimes miss. The world is larger than the path you are given, not in a rebellious way, not as a rejection of structure, but as a quiet recognition that the designers of games and of life built more into this world than any single route can show you. The person who spent 40 years following the expected path may have done something genuinely admirable, but the person who followed an unexpected thread, who said yes to something that didn't fit the plan, who spent 3 years doing something that looked like a detour, they often discover rooms in the world that most people never knew existed. Side quests are not a distraction from the main story. In the best games, and in the best lives, they are the main story. We just don't recognize them as such until much later. Here's what makes side quests interesting from a design perspective. They're rarely about the reward at the end. Yes, you might get better gear, a rare item, some experience points. But the real value of a side quest is almost never the thing you collect when it's finished. It's what you learn along the way. A side quest might take you through a part of the world you've never seen. Introduce you to characters who reframe everything you thought you understood. Give you a skill you didn't know you'd need, until, suddenly, you do. In life, this pattern is everywhere. Once you start looking for it, the woman who took a painting class to manage stress and discovered at 53 a talent she had never suspected. The man who volunteered at a community garden because a friend asked him to, and found a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. The career change that felt like failure at the time, and turned out to be the most formative chapter of an entire working life. None of these were planned. None of them were on the map. But they taught something the main path couldn't. They opened doors that weren't visible from the main road. Side quests don't just add content to the game, they add depth to the player. And that depth, accumulated quietly over time, is often what makes the difference between a life that was lived and a life that was merely completed. There's a particular kind of side quest that almost every player has encountered. The one that seemed unimportant at first. The one with a slow start and an unimpressive description. The one you were about to walk past, but didn't, for some reason you can't quite explain. And then something happened. A line of dialogue that stopped you cold. A location that took your breath away. A moment that recontextualized everything you thought you knew about the world. And you remember thinking, I almost missed this. Life has those moments too. The conversation you almost didn't start because you were tired and distracted. The book you almost put down after the first chapter. The invitation you almost declined because it didn't seem important enough. So much of what ends up mattering most begins with an almost. Almost didn't go. Almost said no. Almost stayed home. Catching these moments requires a certain quality of attention, a willingness to give something a chance before you've decided whether it's worth your time. A resistance to the habit of pre-filtering everything through what you already know and expect. In games, we sometimes develop this instinct without realizing it. We learn to be curious, to investigate the thing that doesn't seem relevant, to follow a thread even when we don't know where it leads. That instinct, practiced in the relative safety of a game world, is one of the most transferable things a player can develop, because the real world is full of side quests hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Sometimes a side quest doesn't stay a side quest. You follow a thread out of curiosity, expecting to return to the main path in an hour. And slowly, gradually, almost without noticing, the detour becomes the direction. The thing that was supposed to be temporary becomes the thing that defines you. In games, we sometimes call this getting lost in a good way. In life, we sometimes call it finding yourself. Some of the most fulfilled people you'll ever meet arrived at their life's work through a side quest they didn't plan. A hobby that became a calling. A conversation that became a collaboration. A wrong turn that led, somehow, to exactly the right place. And the common thread in those stories is almost never, I had a clear plan, and I executed it perfectly. It's, I followed something that interested me, even when I didn't know why. I stayed curious longer than felt sensible. I kept exploring after the map ran out, because something in me needed to see what was there. The main quest gives you a destination. The side quests give you a life. And for many people, the richest chapters of their story weren't written by following the expected path. They were written in the margins, in the unscheduled hours, In the quiet decision to take one more small detour and see what was waiting. That is where some of the most important things live. There's a certain type of player that every open-world game is secretly built for. Not the speedrunner, not the completionist, though both are entirely valid ways to play. The explorer, the one who wanders, who reads the descriptions of unimportant items, who talks to every NPC, who takes the long road because the long road goes past something interesting. These players see more of the world, not because they're better at the game, but because they're more willing to be surprised by it. In life, that quality, call it curiosity or openness, or a tolerance for not knowing what comes next, might be one of the most valuable things a person can cultivate. Not recklessness, not a rejection of responsibility, just a gentle willingness to look sideways, to entertain the possibility that the most interesting thing in your day might not be the thing you scheduled. As we get older, life has a tendency to narrow. Routines solidify. The map shrinks to a few familiar routes. We stop noticing the side quests because we've decided, somewhere along the way, that we don't have time for them. But the side quests are still there. They always are. The question is whether we're still the kind of player who stops to look. Whatever your main quest looks like right now, whatever you're building, working toward, or trying to complete, I hope you leave a little room for the detours. Not because the main path doesn't matter. It does. But because some of the best things that will ever happen to you won't announce themselves. They'll appear quietly at the edge of your attention. Easy to walk past, easy to dismiss. In games and in life, the moments we remember most are rarely the ones we planned for. They're the ones we almost skipped. Stay curious. Keep exploring. I'll see you in the next one.